The following program is brought to you by PodcastOne Sportsnet.
This episode of Steve Austin Show is sponsored in part by DDP Yoga. Hey man, working all the matches I worked over the years, it ain't no surprise that my body's been beaten to hell. My buddy Diamond Dallas Page knows all about the wear and tear the ring takes on your body, and his DDP Yoga fitness system was specifically designed to burn fat, reduce pain, and heal up from injuries. And just check out this list of folks he's helped out with his program. Scott Hall, Goldust, Chris Jericho, Edge, Jake Roberts, AJ Styles, and now even Drew McIntyre and NXT's Bobby Fish are adapting the DDPY program. Dallas is coming by my crib this Friday to firsthand help me out with the DDPY app and putting me through a damn workout. I'm looking forward to it. And Dallas is so positive that you will absolutely love the DDPY program and using the DDPY app that he's doing something he ain't never done before. He's going to give you 7 days free to try it out. That's a week to try the program, explore the app, and own your life, and it's completely free. Listen to me. I'm speaking from my heart here because I'm fixing to find out firsthand. DDP Yoga can work for all ages, weights, and fitness levels. It's a kick-ass cardio workout that will dramatically increase your flexibility and strengthen your core like never before, all with minimal joint impact. And for those baby boomers out there, Dallas has introduced another game changer, the DDPY Rebuild DVDs. These DDPY workouts are for those with limited mobility, and yes, you can also find DDPY Rebuild on the DDPY app. You can even do a workout sitting down or lying in bed. I might be doing the DDPY Rebuild workout. Just for listeners of the Steve Austin Show, you can save 20% off an annual membership for the DDP Yoga Now app of any DVD pack. Just go to ddpyoga.com/Austin to get started. I'm getting started Friday.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production. From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, everybody, welcome to Steve Austin Show. I am coming to you from the mean streets of Los Angeles, California today. I'm sitting over here at 317 Gimme Street. I got a damn good show for you today. Today, I'm going to finish up some of the questions that you guys sent in, the questions at SteveAustinShow.com. That's right. I got a Q&A for you. And I'm going to be talking and answering your questions for about an hour and 15 minutes, so I ain't going to dilly-dally around. I'm going to get right into your questions. And before we get to those questions, I want to talk to you guys about the WWE Network for a minute. Did you know that WWE Network is an online video streaming service where you can stream every WWE pay-per-view live? Watch more than 10,000 hours of video on demand. Get a look behind the scenes with WWE's groundbreaking original series and documentaries. Access anywhere, anytime, and on any device, including game consoles, TVs, phones, tablets, and computers. And watch every stunner and mudhole stomping by yours truly, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And now, through June 19th, we have a special offer just for listeners of the Steve Austin Show. New subscribers get a 2-month free trial when they sign up for WWE Network at WWENetwork.com/Austin. Your 2-month free trial includes a couple pay-per-views. WWE Money in the Bank on June 17th, featuring the Money in the Bank ladder match, plus Rowdy Ronda Rousey versus Nia Jax for the Raw Women's Championship. And WWE Extreme Rules on July 15th, where for one night only, the WWE throws the rule book out the window and anything goes. So get on over to WWENetwork.com/Austin to start your 2-month free trial. And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so.
There's never a dull week in the world of professional wrestling, so to keep up on all of it, be sure to subscribe to the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast here at PodcastOne. I produce 2 new shows each week. Every Thursday on our flagship show, I'm joined by a co-host from the wrestling journalism field to talk about the hot topics in WWE and elsewhere. Every Friday, I'm joined by a guest who has worked in the wrestling business, including ex-WWE creative team members like Kevin Eck talking about Drew McIntyre.
Drew was a young guy, and did it go to his head, and did he walk around like he was the chosen one? He did, and I was frank with him, and I said, Drew, just so you know, this is how they view you.
And PodcastOne's own Christian Harloff, talking about his days working for WWE and Vince McMahon specifically.
As far as their perception of him, I mean, he's the king. He walks in, and it's just, you can feel it. I mean, if the Force was real, you would feel the Force powering into the room when he enters.
Just search Wade Keller on Apple Podcasts or on the PodcastOne app or anywhere else you listen to podcasts.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Steve Austin Show. I am sitting here in my Austin 316 chair at 317 Gimmick Street, and I'm about to provide some answers to the questions you guys sent in to questions@steveaustonshow.com. And the first question comes from a guy named Matt in Saskatoon, Canada. And he's saying, hey, I was hoping Steve Austin might talk about the time the WWE toured Canada when he wrestled. Did you enjoy doing Raw/SmackDown in Canada? Did wrestlers complain about traveling through Canada? Be honest. Or did they enjoy it? Do you have a favorite Canadian city? Best and worst about wrestling in Canada. Thanks and love the show. Hope you can provide a few minutes of commentary on this. Sincerely, Matt in Saskatoon, Canada, big wrestling fan. Boy, I tell you what, Matt, man, I always enjoyed working in Canada. The people were great. The crowds are great. Canada's a great wrestling territory. You know, going back to the Calgary Stampede days. You know, I'm not sure about all the different other wrestling promotions that were there, but, you know, because of my relationship with the Hart family, specifically Bret Hart, I know a lot about the Calgary wrestling scene. Know so much about the super long trips, road trips that those guys used to go on between the towns, all the snow and weather that they traveled through to get to their destination, to put on a house show wherever it was. I always dug Canada. Like I said, great wrestling place. The biggest problem was crossing over the border. And Canada is very strict at the border, and they should be. And they go through everything. They make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And when the boys start coming through, due to the fact that a lot of times back in the 80s, early 80s, probably 70s, 80s, guys were carrying a lot of stuff over there. There's many stories about the Iron Sheik, and he'd always have some weed or something like that with him, and he'd put that in someone else's bag. But the precedent had already been set that a lot of times when the guys came through, they were going to be carrying some stuff, whether it was this, that, or whatever. You can probably guess what it might have been. But that was one of the biggest pains in the asses about going to Canada, because you knew you were going to get pulled over. You were going to sit in a room for an hour, 2 or 3. They were going to go through all your stuff and shake everything out. And so 99 times out of 100, nobody had shit. But every here and there, someone would have something, and that's why they always kept checking the boys when they came into the country. So great on Customs' part. They did a very thorough job. But when you're one of the guys who's passing through there and you ain't got nothing in your bag and you get pulled over, that's a pain in the ass, because you're always on a schedule. Trying to hit the gym, you're trying to hit a tan in bed, you're trying to go get something to eat. You may check into your hotel room. It might be one of those deals where you're going straight to the building, and then you got a long road trip after that. But that was always a pain in the ass when you had to go and cross through Customs on the way there. Coming back in the States, hell, it wasn't nothing but a thing. As far as traveling in Canada, I used to listen to a lot of the Calgary Stampede days. Some of the guys that were part of the Attitude Era, Chris Jericho, a lot of those guys that were in my period of participation in WWE came from Stampede days, and they traveled in that territory. Brian Pillman managed to hear all the stories, all the ribs, all the guys loaded up in vans trying to save some money. Everybody chipping on gas. Nobody was making a whole bunch of money. And all the ribs that were played on the road. So there's a lot of history there in Canada. And Canada is just a great country for wrestling because the fans are very enthusiastic. I always talk about the Calgary Stampede, that pay-per-view we had that one year. I can't remember. I talked about it on a podcast before. Man, those people are hardcore fans, so that makes it fun. And as I'm looking at this map, I'm looking at some of the classic cities that we used to go to, and this was a period of time when I was traveling with Bart Gunn and Billy Gunn. And we were staying at some of these shitbox Econo lodges and Red Roof Inns and stuff like that. And there would be 3 of us in a room. And towns like Moose Jaw, God dang Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, Red Deer. Those were some of the B towns. Kamloops, I think Kelowna. The big cities like Vancouver. Vancouver was always cool. I mean, that's one of my favorite cities across the border because it's right across the United States border, just north of Seattle. The weather for Canada, in my opinion, is fairly mild compared to the rest of the country. You start getting to Calgary, it starts getting really, really cold. Vancouver's absolutely beautiful. The thing about wrestling in Vancouver was every time we got in the damn ring, you'd be in there in the main event, you'd be in there working your ass off, and damn near every single time, a lot like, Salt Lake City, man, there'd be a fight in the crowd. Every time a fight in the crowd breaks out, the attention goes to the fight in the crowd. And as two guys who are in the ring trying to put on a show, that doesn't work so well because you want the attention on you and you also want to watch the fight. So anyway, that was one of I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. It was a funny thing about Vancouver because it's really a pretty mild city. Calgary, the Saddle Dome, that's an awesome place to wrestle. A lot of atmosphere, all the history there with the Hearts and all of that. Edmonton was another good town. I had a great match with Chris Benoit in Edmonton one night, and I believe it was on the SmackDown show. And we had worked a previous night on Raw, and they only gave us a certain amount of minutes. And I wasn't very happy with that match because we didn't have enough time to tell the proper story. And I'll never forget when we rolled into Edmonton that night. It was a SmackDown, and we were going to work together again. And I told Chris before we went out there, I said, dude, I don't care how much time they give us. We're going to go when it's time to go home. And, it's all on me. I'll take the heat. So if they give us a go-home cue, disregard it. And we really ripped it up that night. And there's another question coming up with regards to that match, which I'll get into in a little bit. But, then you get over there to Regina, what did I say, Moose Jaw already. Winnipeg, I think we're starting to get close to where Chris Jericho's from, right over in that area. That was a great little town, hotbed. People are crazy over there. They really love their wrestling. And then, of course, you got Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec City. Here's where some of the problems start to come in, because when you start getting into the French-speaking provinces, maybe they all speak French all over the country, but specifically, man, it's Ottawa, Montreal City, and Quebec City. And all of a sudden, if you're on a road and you pull over to a gas station, and back in the day, we used to always choose Skoal or Copenhagen or whatever, or we'd need to gas up, or we'd be lost. That's just the way it was. We didn't have iPhones to give us directions. You didn't punch in an address into something and it started talking to you. We had those regular full-size road atlases that were about 2 feet long and about 2 feet wide when you opened it. And you learned how to read a map pretty damn good, or your ass was lost. And getting lost doesn't pay the bill. So you always found a way to read a map. Every now and then, like I said, when we pulled over, asked some directions, and the dude behind the counter would just look at you with this deadpan look and start speaking straight up French to you. And I'm thinking, come on, man. 80% of this country, this is my guesstimate, 80% of the country speaks fluent English. And I know that the rest of the 20 speak some English, and they probably, speak a lot of French. But I know without a shadow of a doubt that they speak English. And it was like they were pulling a rib on you. And so when you start getting into those French-speaking areas, they're great wrestling fans. And, of course, the Rougeaus were huge in these areas, and Canada as well. But that French would really throw you for a loop. But it was a good time being over there. And it was kind of like the Wild, Wild West. And you could see a lot of territory over there because there was a lot to drive. But I enjoyed my time over there. Coming and going across the border was a pain in the ass. Getting the directions in French was not fun. The crowds are always great. And best and worst about wrestling in Canada. I'd say the worst thing was about how cold it could be in some of the cities where it got really cold. And I would always wear shorts wherever we went because we spent most of our day in an airplane, a hotel room, a gym, a building. We were always indoors. And all the boys would rib me and said, man, why don't you put on some friggin' long pants? And I had on a jacket, I had on a heavy coat, I had a cap, I had everything. I was warm. And people always think, oh, you're going to get the flu because your legs are showing. You don't get the flu because you get cold. You get the flu because, you get some kind of virus or whatever causes the flu, the influenza virus. It ain't because your legs are exposed. So anyway, my legs would be all ashy and white, and I look like shit, and all the boys would rib me about that. So the cold part of Canada was the tough part. You know, when you stop in the middle of the night to gas up, then you could freeze your ass off a little bit. The best part, the crowds, because, man, when you showed up, I mean, Canada's they love their fellow Canadians. And when we did Calgary Stampede there, and I was technically, and everybody on my side was technically a babyface in the United States. And we went over there and you know, we were working against guys that were heels in the United States. And we swapped roles, and that was an absolute blast. So I think the best part about wrestling in Canada is how avid of wrestling fans they are. They absolutely love the business. They love the product. They're into the storylines, and they're very, very engaged and very involved. So anytime you get a hot crowd, you know, you want to go out there and give them a good show. I will say one of the towns we used to wrestle in all the time, Hamilton, was always, I'll put this in the worst. Hamilton is a great town, but it always seemed like someone got hurt every single time we worked Hamilton. I don't know, it was like one of those Bermuda Triangle type things. One time we had a 6-man. It was myself, Triple H, and somebody else against 3 other guys. And, you know, the house wasn't very good. The territory was down. And we kind of just told each other, all right, man, we got a big show coming up. Everybody just kind of go out there and take it easy. Let's give these guys a good show, and let's get out of Dodge. Sure enough, Triple H was hitting the ropes, doing nothing. He was just hitting the ropes. Bam. Blows out a knee, does something to his knee, but he gets hurt nonetheless. And it was like a lot of the injuries that happen in the business, and this isn't specific to Hamilton, it just always seemed like something went awry over there. But sometimes you get in those matches, and people always think, oh, man, you know, wrestling's rigged, wrestling's fake, this, that, or whatever. That the mat is like a trampoline. Oh, man, the mat ain't like a trampoline. Hitting the ropes, just doing a crisscross high spot for argument's sake. Dude, if you trip, if anything goes wrong, if a rope snaps, much less, you know, you get involved in a high spot where something goes wrong and you have 2 guys or 2 gals running full speed and you collide and something goes wrong, or there's a botch, or, you know, you don't land flat. Any time could be your last time inside a ring, and that's a total shoot. So, but anyway, that was just a side note about Hamilton. So it always seemed like someone got hurt there, but that's about all I got to say about Canada, man. Great fans over there. Of course, the legendary Hart family, the Rougeau family. There's been some famous wrestling families come out of Canada, and that Calgary Stampede Wrestling. Here's one. This is from Paul from South End on Sea. He says, my question is, in your prime, do you think you could have been a success in the MMA/UFC? And he has a follow-up question, which I'll get to in a minute. Man, I tell you what, I'm a huge fan, MMA, UFC. I've been asked this question before, but to give you a straight-up answer, I think I would have had a good chin for it. I don't know if I'd have had a good anything else for it. The only time I ever got knocked out in my life, and I've been in a couple of car wrecks, never got knocked out. When I got dropped on my head, I never got knocked out. When I was wrestling The Undertaker in Madison Square Garden at Highway to Hell, when he bent over to give me a backdrop and I kicked him, and he straightened up and the back of his head caught me flush under the chin, right in that zone, and it flashed me. I went down, and that's when I was looking up at the Madison Square Garden ceiling, and Earl Hebner looked down at me and had that little smile on his face, and he says, God dang it, boy, you okay? And I said, where am I? He goes, that dang boy, you in the garden. And so I got knocked out there. So I think that was a hell of a damn shot. So I think I would have had a pretty good chin for the MMA/UFC. But, man, I've never taken any karate classes, no jiu-jitsu classes. I never had one single shoot wrestling lesson in my life. All I've known is college football, baseball, discus throwing. I didn't do any boxing. I've trained in boxing for a few months at a time. Wasn't extremely proficient at it. Always kept my hands down. Well, my right arm doesn't straighten out all the way, so that kind of cuts the range out in my right arm. But going back to my prime, I don't know if I'd have been worth a shit or not at MMA, UFC. All I can say is that I'm a good fan. I love the business. Just got finished texting Daniel Cormier. I know he's getting ready for a fight with Stipe Miocic coming up here on July 7th, and that's a fight that I'm really looking forward to. It's a sport that I really enjoy. It's a sport that's been interesting to watch evolve from the guys that were just pure strikers to the guys that were just pure wrestlers. And now all these years later to see what it's morphed into, where, wrestling is still kind of, the bread and butter of it all, but the jiu-jitsu with the striking and the wrestling that's all combined to become the hybrid art form that it is, or sport that it is. I used to love boxing. All of the great characters kind of disappeared from boxing. And now, UFC is kind of like so exciting, and anything can happen at any time with the kicking, the strikes, the chokes, just the art form that it is, and how deceptive some of these guys can be, and the skills that they bring. It's at a whole different level. So, I wouldn't have been successful at it, but I'm a huge fan and continue to watch it, and watch damn near every single pay-per-view they do and all the stuff on Fox Sports 1. But as a follow-up question, he says, hey, is there anyone from your prime time, not obvious, like a Kurt Angle, who you think could have cut it in the octagon? Well, and this is from Paul McKeon. Obviously Brock Lesnar has done what he's done, and I guess there's word or maybe rumor or maybe something that he might go have another fight in the UFC. I don't know. I know he just I thought he re-signed with WWE. But Brock obviously has done what he did. Kurt Angle, it would have been interesting to see what Kurt could have done, because he won the gold medal in the Olympics in 1996 with a broken neck. And obviously that means his wrestling skills are, premier. But as a striker, how would he have fared as a chin? What kind of chin does he have as far as trying to, take some blows that these guys are dishing out? I'll never forget when Kurt Angle broke into the business. I guess it was back in the late 90s, or was it 2000? Nonetheless, you just see this blue chip athlete, and the guy was an absolute blur, very aggressive, highly technical. He caught on to the business of pro wrestling faster than anybody I've ever seen. So had he applied himself to MMA and striking and jiu-jitsu and everything that went with it, he was so high level of a wrestler, I don't know why he could not have been high level at the striking and every other aspect of MMA. But obviously, that's my speculation. As far as other guys, you had Ken Shamrock, but he was training for pro wrestling, got into MMA, then came back out of pro wrestling. And there's a guy who, like I said, many times before in the podcast, a guy who came out of a shoot business after being in a work business and come back to a shoot world as the legit toughest guy in the world, the baddest human being walking planet Earth. And it was Ken Shamrock. And I caught some words or lines from an interview he just did, and he initially had reservations about being the special guest referee when Brett and myself were going to have the submission match, because coming from that shoot world of MMA, he didn't want to be part of something that wasn't going to be able to hold up or, wasn't going to pass the test or make the grade. And obviously, we went out there and rocked the house and tore the joint down and executed a double turn. And Brett got his shit in. I got my shit in. I left as a baby. Brett left as a heel. And, Ken was a big part of that match. It's like I said when I was doing the podcast with Edge and Christian and Bret Hart talking about that match. I thought Ken brought a lot of star power to the match. Legit. He brought presence, just good-looking dude, jacked up. If there's anybody that can enforce the rules between two guys who are at a major angle that was built and ready to go, it was Ken Shamrock. He brought a lot of star power to the match, and from a different world, bringing those outside eyeballs. So obviously Ken did what he did in the world of MMA. And then when I think about the rest of the guys, there's been some... There's been a lot of tough-ass guys in the business of pro wrestling, But when you're in the gym or you're in the dojo or whatever they call it, and you're training like those MMA guys do, day in, day out, going through the grind, I mean, whether it's working on their grappling, their striking, their jiu-jitsu, but that's what you train to do, and you are a professional fighter, that's a whole different level. That's a whole different stratosphere. And when you're trained to entertain people like you are in the world of professional wrestling, you know, some of the best athletes I've ever seen in my life came from, that were in the business of pro wrestling, came from the world of football. But football ain't fighting. And if you put a UFC guy in a football uniform, you know, that doesn't really transfer. His skills in the octagon don't transfer to the gridiron. So, you know, most of the guys' skills in the world of pro wrestling wouldn't transfer into what would go on in an octagon. Although many have said, and I've never seen him in action, but Haku/Meng was an absolute destroyer in his prime. Big ass hands, just tougher than all get out. And everybody will vouch to that. But, you know, how he would have fared into a heavyweight match with one of the premier people in the octagon, I don't know. But out on the streets, everybody in the locker room respected him. And if you didn't know anything about him and you were about to start some shit with him in a bar, you were about to have your ass handed to you. And that's the bottom line. So anyway, I segued into a little bit of street fighting there, but no, man, I probably wouldn't have been worth a shit at it, but I'm a huge fan, and I'm looking forward to CM Punk's fight coming up here pretty quick. I'm looking forward to Stipe Miocic and DC, Daniel Cormier getting it on July 7th. Hopefully I get a chance to talk to DC before that fight, and that will be a fight where it'll be interesting because Daniel's coming up from light heavy to go back to being a heavyweight. And then there's Stipe, probably going to go down maybe as the greatest heavyweight fighter in the history of the UFC. So we'll find out. But that is going to be an interesting match, and it'll be one that I will be paying my $60 to watch. Here's another question. Comes from Boz over there in Walsall, United Kingdom. Get a lot of people from the UK that listen to the show, and I appreciate it very much. Got a long question here. Why do you think there isn't a lot of focus on Bruiser Brody by the WWE? Do you think we'll ever have a documentary on the network based on his life or anything similar to the Andre documentary? Would be great for the younger fans who might not know what influences guys like Bruiser had on guys like yourself who influenced the current guys and us fans. Cheers, mate. Love the show. Hey, Boz, I appreciate the question. Let's get to this. I'm sure Bruiser Brody probably stepped foot in a WWF ring or a WWF ring back in the day as an independent coming through, I'm guessing. But he never spent an appreciable amount of time in that territory if he crossed through it. From everything that I've understood about Bruiser Brody, he was an independent. He worked Japan. He crossed through the promotions, the different territories, and worked the bookings that he picked up. He was a smart guy with his money. He was a shrewd businessman. You know, he lost his life in Puerto Rico where he was stabbed in the shower. I don't know if they were talking about the finish of the match, if they were talking about payoffs or angles or whatever went down. But I don't think he spent a whole lot of time in the WWF, and I don't know that WWE would be able to monetize making a documentary on Bruiser Brody because the business has moved on so far from that. Now, a lot of people don't know who Bruiser Brody is, to your point. I think it would be great for somebody to do a documentary about Bruiser Brody because, to me, he was one of the most influential guys in the history of the business. As far as the brawlers go, I don't know that there's ever been a better brawler than Bruiser Brody. And he could basically not just brawl, he could do it all. If you watch some of his matches that he had with Nature Boy Ric Flair, they would actually lock up, headlock takeovers, and wrestle. Bruiser could wrestle his ass off. He preferred to brawl, and he was a tough son of a bitch by anybody's account. So he was a smart guy. He could be a very intimidating guy from what I've heard about him. I never got a chance to meet the guy. I'd love to see a documentary made on him. I don't know, that it's incumbent upon WWE to make a documentary on him. But it'd be neat for someone to make a documentary on him. He didn't have the worldwide or global appeal or notoriety that Andre the Giant had, and so maybe that's why you won't see a documentary on him. But from some wrestling, smaller type budget wrestling, something like those. What's that guy who sends me DVDs all the time? Broken Elbow, whatever productions. Someone should do a documentary on Bruiser Brody. I'll stop rambling because I'm getting out of my wheelhouse there. But he was very influential, and shit, for myself, for Cactus Jack, for anybody that brawls. Keith in Indiana says, "Hey Steve, I was just wondering, did you ever catch that skunk?" Man, I'll tell you, last time I told a story about that skunk over there in Nevada at the Broken Skull Ranch 2.0, man, my yard guy had a blower stuck in one side of a culvert. I was 20 feet away with my 22 in my hand, waiting for that skunk to come out, and he never came out. So we ain't caught the skunk yet. I put the 22 away. I have the Have a Heart trap ready. Next time I go back down in Nevada, I'm going to try to catch that bastard, because the last thing I need that summit to do is to squirt Cali or Moolah and have them smelling like shit. When that damn skunk lit up Hershey a couple of years ago down there in South Texas, she stunk like hell. We knocked the initial smell off of her, but it took a couple of months for her to smell back to normal, and it scalded her eyes. So them skunks, hey, man, I ain't got nothing against the skunk. They're just being skunks. But when they come up to, do business, or all of a sudden they're face to face with your pet and they turn around and squirt their ass in and light their ass up, I can't have it. So the skunk's got to go. All right, here's a question from Sammy. Hey, man, I've been a diehard fan since I was a kid, and I'm currently 23. My question is, how do wrestlers work out effectively when they're on the road traveling all the time? I'm a traveling salesman, and I stay in Hampton Inns, Holiday Inns, and Hilton Garden Inns 300 days a year. These hotel gyms, more often than not, have nothing but treadmills and dumbbells up to 50 pounds. There are so many important workouts I cannot do without bars or machines. How do the wrestlers do it and look like bodybuilders? Sammy. Well, Sammy, come on, man. 50-pound dumbbells are 50-pound dumbbells. Your cardio is your cardio, man. If you just make up a circuit when you're in those Garden Inns and those Hampton Inns, Holiday Inns, dude, I've stayed at 1,000,000 of those places where all they got is 50-pound dumbbells, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think that they don't want to go any heavier than that because they don't want a liability. They're not going to have those 100-pound dumbbells in there for someone to go in there and get hurt. Ain't nobody going to get hurt, but I just think that's what they do over there. It can be frustrating, but dude, if you just put your mind to it, if you make up a circuit routine and throw in some abs or some squat thrust or some burpees in between doing 50-pound dumbbell presses, jump down and just string a bunch of exercise together, and then in between that, go 1 minute hard on a treadmill or one of those bicycles and get back on your weights. There's so many ways that you can mess with those, make yourself up a little cycle while you're there of just a cycle of exercises and train your whole body. Yeah, we spent, all those days a year on the road. And the thing about it is, when you get into a new territory, you start hanging out with the guys and you learn where every gym in the United States is. Well, all the good gyms. And they're all the same. So each town you fly into, you're going to the same gym. Sometimes you don't have a chance to get your workout in the gym, but more often than not, that's what we did. And for sometimes, I've trained at 1,000,000 of those damn hotels you speak of. Just go in there and get something done. If you go in there and put in 45 to 60 minutes and get your swell on, you maintain your consistency, you burn off all them shit calories you're eating from eating most of the trash that's on the road. But again, if you want to talk about dietary stuff, you go to any IHOP, Denny's, Cracker Barrel, Waffle House. If you get grilled chicken, egg whites, steamed hash browns from Waffle House, You can eat clean in any restaurant you go to. If you only see a string of McDonald's, Burger Kings, and Wendy's, you just go through the drive-through window and get either chicken or hamburgers and throw the bread away and just eat the meat. You don't need to go keto, but you don't need all that white starchy stuff in that bread. So it's easy, very easy to eat on the road. It's easier to make excuses to eat garbage on the road because, one, you want comfort food. Two, because it's easy to say it's hard to eat clean on the road, so you just eat shit. But it's really easy to eat clean on the road. And after all the times I traveled with Billy Gunn, Bob Holly, and those two guys were absolute gym fanatics. And whenever it came to eating at a restaurant, I'd be over eating junk or hamburgers or Burt's Chili or whatever. And those guys would be eating egg whites and chicken breasts, and that's why they always looked like $1 million, because they always put the time in the gym. And neither one of them drank as much as I did. Well, I didn't think Bob even drank. Billy would have some cocktails with me, but we were so active in the ring, doing cardio when we was at the gym, making the rounds. But that 15 to 25 minutes every single night in that squared circle would burn so many calories, and you get your heart rate up so high, man, you could almost eat like shit and damn near be a body guy, depending on your genetics. He says, one more question. He says, Steve, even after you adopted the brawler style following the Owen Hart Tombstone pile driver, I still feel we could have gotten more from the Dude Love versus Stone Cold feud. What are your memories with Mick from that part of your 98 run as world champion? Well, man, it's hard for me to remember everything that happened in 1998 just because it's been so damn long ago, and that's 20 years ago. I just remember working with Dude Love. I remember working with Mick Foley, whatever you want to call him, whatever, Mankind. You know, Mick was absolutely phenomenal, and we met way back in our early days when he was in the business before I was, and we met, I guess, in Dallas, Texas, and then, of course, you know, we crossed paths in WCW, and then we turned into traveling partners, and we rode the roads together, but, you know, as far as the feud in its totality goes, I can't remember. I remember that one match we had, and there was a bunch of cars involved, and we were bouncing off those and used those as a lot of props. But Mick Foley is one of my favorite guys to work with. There was a guy who would do absolutely anything in the world, and Mick was always hungry to have the best match on the card. I don't know a night that Mick Foley took off. He always wanted to have a damn good match. He wasn't selfish. He wanted both guys to get over. He wanted the finish to make sense. Mick was a very smart businessman. He knew how to take care of himself, and he had a big enough heart, and he gave a shit enough that he wanted the other guy to come out whole just as well. You know, and that's whether, you know, Mick Foley's going over or under. He was a businessman, and he knew the business. He was a very smart guy and had a very good demeanor about going into a match. And, you know, some of those matches he had with myself, The Rock, Undertaker, Kane, I mean, the dude had classics with everybody he worked with, so he's one of my favorites. As far as the feud in and of itself, how long it lasted, I don't remember, but I remember working with Mick plenty of times and always loved working with him because every time you work with Mick, he's going to bring plenty of ideas, plenty of creativity. He's going to want to get our shit in and entertain those fans to the utmost ability that we both had. And so nothing but respect to Mick Foley, the hardcore legend, WWE Hall of Famer. All right, let's take a quick pause for the calls and give big ups to Geico. Go to geico.com, and in 15 minutes, you could be saving 15% or more on car insurance. That's right. Save hundreds of dollars on car insurance at geico.com. Extra money in your pocket? It may just be the most rewarding thing you do today.
I'm not going very far.
It's too uncomfortable.
I'm in a hurry. Sometimes I just forget.
There's no such thing as a good excuse for not buckling up. You're not only putting yourself at risk of injury or death, it could also cost you lots of money. Cops are writing tickets, so why take the risk? Do the smart thing and start buckling up every trip, day or night. Click it or ticket. Paid for by NHTSA.
Listen up. If you're digging the Steve Austin Show and need more rapid-fire takes on the sports world from the most expert voices, then take a gamble on R.J. Bell's Dream Preview each week on PodcastOne Sportsnet. Got everything you need on the biggest games each week from pregame.com Wise Guy Roundtable with host R.J. Bell and some of the biggest names from the world of sports betting. Subscribe and listen to R.J. Bell's Dream Preview exclusively at Apple Podcast, PodcastOne.com, and the Podcast One app. Also, remember to rate and review. We always appreciate your feedback. All right, before we get to me answering the questions you guys sent in, here's a fact for you. Did you know that 66% of men start to lose their hair by the time they're 35? It happens so fast you barely have time to notice. Well, thanks to science, baldness can be optional, and Hims is here to help. Hims is a wellness brand for the modern man, a one-stop shop for hair loss, skin care, and sexual wellness, making men's personal care trusted, easy, and affordable. Hims offers FDA-approved medical-grade products, personalized recommendations, plus convenient, confidential online consultation with a licensed doctor. There are no pharmacy lines, no waiting room. The products are shipped directly to your door, and Hims passes big savings along to you, offering prescription and generic for just a fraction of the price. Sound treatment and prevention backed by medicine and science. Look better, feel better, do better with Hims. For listeners of the Steve Austin Show, get a trial month of everything you need to keep your hair for just $5 while supplies last. This would cost you hundreds of dollars if you went to a doctor's office or pharmacy, so what are you waiting for? Save some damn money and save your damn hair. Just go to forhims.com/unleashed for all the details. That's forhims.com/unleashed and stomp a mud hole in the hair loss and walk it dry. One more time, forhims.com/unleashed to get yourself a trial month for just $5.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
Here's one from Edmond, Oklahoma, from Reg Bamford. He said, "Hey, man, I've heard you talk about your longtime friendship with Brian Pillman. Did that make it harder or easier or just fun to beat the hell out of him during that SummerSlam promo about Bret Hart? You wore his ass out." Man, I tell you what, when I shanghaied Brian Pillman from behind with that big right hand, kind of like a semi-clothesline, I stomped a mud hole in his ass and walked it by. I was working, but it was a damn near shoot because it had to be. I was wearing those heavy-ass, high-tech Magnum boots. I still wear those boots to this day, and those things got a damn sole on them. They're very, very comfortable, but I stomped the shit out of him. I was kicking him. I was beating him to death, and I'll tell you, and I threw Jerry Briscoe out of the ring when he ran to the ring, and as long as that beating lasted, if you'll watch that footage back, Brian was out there with that cane, and there was a brass duck head on top of that cane that you put your hand on. And so when I took that baseball swing and hit him in his shin, and he had his leg bandaged up, there was some plastic wrapped around his shin so I didn't break his shin. But the stick broke. The walking stick broke. And if you watch that footage back, watch that brass duck head as I hit him in the leg fly off right into the crowd. And I believe it hits the top of that metal barricade thing. And it damn near could have easily hurt somebody. But we got lucky and it didn't. And believe me, when I swung that damn walking stick, I was swinging for the fence. It broke off. It didn't hurt him. I sandwiched his leg in between that chair, and then I jumped off that damn second turnbuckle. Like I said, shit-can Briscoe, who I absolutely love, through those ropes. And I beat the hell out of him. It was fun because it was a piece of business, but it was a very serious piece of business. I was a heel. I was trying to get heat. I attacked him for no apparent reason other than the fact I was probably a little bit psycho because I was jealous of the fact that he kept bringing up Bret Hart's name with reverence in my interview time. That's the reason I jumped him. But if you will remember, a couple of weeks or a couple of months later, he turned the tides on me. And let me tell you something, mister, as bad and as hard as I was kicking the shit out of him, He gave it to me and then some. He beat the flying shit out of me, and I wasn't selling it, and I knew I had it coming, and I knew there was going to be a receipt on the end of that ass whooping, and I didn't know how Brian was, going to respond, because this was weeks or months later. But when he beat the dog shit out of me, I mean, let me tell you, that was one of the worst beatings I've ever had in the history of my time in the business. That's a straight up shoot. Brian was kicking the shit out of me. And on a note, when I kicked the shit out of Brian, they drug him out of there. Well, I think they put him on a damn gurney or something, carried him off, and they took him to the opposite side of the arena. I went back to the dressing room. They took him out of different ways. I think they put him in an ambulance. And I actually asked all of the agents, I said, hey, man, I said, is he okay? Because that's how bad I was beating him. That's how stiff I was on that beating. And again, I'm not calling myself a UFC fighter. We've already talked about that. But when a guy's giving you his body, but you got to lay your shit in and make it look good, anything could happen. And I was hitting him in all the right spots, and he was staying flush and square for me, and vice versa when he was beating me. But, when you're beating the fuck out of somebody, shit happens. And so it was stiff, but it was a lot of fun. Anytime I got a chance to do business with Brian, it was a good time, but it was very competitive. And by the same token, he beat the flying shit out of me when he wore my ass out, and that's the bottom line. Here's another question. Hey, Steve, Jeremy here. I've been a fan of yours for about as long as I can remember, and I've always been a big fan of your ring work. You never seemed to lose your cool when things got heated up or botched. What was the most heated in-ring moment or botch you had or was a part of? Jay Bruner. Man, Jay, I always tried to remain calm in the ring with respect to things going wrong, because there's that old saying, never let them see you sweat. So if some things go wrong, you don't want them to know it. I never really got heated up inside the ring because I never had to. I'll never forget one time I was working with Booker T somewhere. Me and Booker T worked together a lot and had a blast. And I love Booker T. But one time, and I've told this story on a podcast before, one time Booker T, I don't know if it was like a jab or a cross, but he knocked the dog shit out of me, and it incensed me immediately. And I knew that a return receipt must be fired now. And so as soon as he hit me and I sold it, boy, I said, God dang it. And I hit him with a right hand. Well, like I said earlier, my right arm doesn't straighten out, but I threw the hardest shot I could back at him because that's how hard he hit me. And I told him backstage, I said, man, if we ever get in a fight, I'm going to whip your ass, because I already know that I took your best shot, and my shot didn't connect good because my right arm wouldn't straighten out. And he started laughing, and Booker T can go. Absolutely, he can go. But that would be a shot that I fired that I thought had to be an immediate receipt, and we still laugh about that to this day. But other than that, the hottest I ever got in the business of pro wrestling was when we was working the Kiel Center in St. Louis, Missouri, and we was working an angle, and I don't remember who I was working with, but Big Boss Man was supposed to run out there and hit me with the chair to cause me to lose the match. We get in the spot. It's at the end of the match. There's no Big Boss Man. He's nowhere to be found. That big bastard's supposed to run out there and cause me to lose the match so we can get off and start working an angle together. So here comes Jerry Briscoe. Jerry Briscoe was one of the great shooters out of Oklahoma State, and comes out there. Those old school guys aren't really great with chairs because they didn't really use chairs. They're steel chairs or even wooden chairs back in their generation. And they didn't sling them like we would sling them in the Attitude Era and currently now when they are able to use chairs. So he comes out there and hits me with this weak ass chair shot. I got to go down. I get beat. I really want him to kill me with that chair so it looked better. But anyway, I get to the back, and then all of a sudden, as I'm getting to the back, I'm like, where is he? And here comes Ray, Big Boss Man. He had been in the back talking to Undertaker while the match was going on. I guess Undertaker was in the main event, or he had already wrestled, but he was back there talking to Taker. And man, I lit into Big Boss Man. It was the loudest cuss job I'd probably ever done in the history of the business. And I never, ever lose my cool like that. Never in a million years. Well, except one other time in Cleveland Gun Arena. But yeah, I really uncorked on Ray because I was really upset that he wasn't there, because not only did he mess up the match and, here comes Jerry Briscoe rather than Big Boss Man, but that nullified our angle that we were supposed to work. And I was looking forward to working with Ray. And he was such a great guy and a great big man. There weren't too many times I got heated up. I mean, when you go out there and you're at that level, you're a pro and you take pride in what you're doing, and you know that things are work. You know that things can go wrong, and if they do go wrong, it's up to you to fly by the seat of your pants. And that's something that I always prided myself on, whether it was on a promo segment, a segment with physicality in a match, complex matches where multiple people involved, things get out of order, and you just got to find a way to make chicken salad out of chicken shit. And so that's the way we always rolled. And for that matter, I can't say this is a blanket statement across the history of the business, but I haven't seen too many times when people really got hot in the ring. I'll never forget, I was just talking about Bruiser Brody the other day. For some reason, way back in the day in WCW, Bruiser Brody, was it NWA? I think it was WCW. Bruiser Brody was working with Lex Luger in a steel cage, and Fonzie was the referee in that match. And for some reason, I don't know what went wrong, but whether Brody didn't like the finish, but he started no-selling all of Lex's moves. And, Lex didn't really know whether to shit or wind his watch, and he finally just gets out of the ring and climbs out of the cage. And I don't know if Bruiser had a bunch of blades taped to his finger. I think that's where he used to keep his blades, or what was going on. He didn't cut Lex or anything like that, but he just started no-selling him. Bruiser was a big, scary guy, and it wasn't like Lex ran around. It wasn't like Lex ran away like a punk. I just think he didn't know what to do. He just said, hey, man, F this. Let me just get out of here. So he just climbed out of the ring. So that was kind of a case where, obviously, Bruiser was a strong, opinionated guy, and something pissed him off. And there's been many cases where guys have gotten mad, but in a work sport, when it turns to a shoot, things get real ugly real fast, and it works better when you work. Here comes a question from Joseph. Joseph says, hey, Steve, I think My Way Limp Bizkit build-up promo between you and The Rock at WrestleMania 13 is the best build-up promo I've ever seen. What are your thoughts on it? And what is your favorite build-up promo that you'd have ever been involved in looking back? Joseph, well, that My Way promo for WrestleMania 17 in Houston, Texas at the Astrodome with Jim Ross and Paul Dangerously, Paul Heyman calling that match was phenomenal. The way they edited that footage together, the way that song just fit everything that we were doing, those toasts that The Rock and I did where I had that beer and I handed him his beer and I hit him in the chest and foamed it all over him. And then he took that microphone from me and just completely disrespected me. And I kind of cocked my head and look at him. And then he does a hard toast to me. And I think he knocks the beer out of my hand. And about the time he does that, here comes a swinging door right. Wham! I drill The Rock. That shot connected a little bit. He drilled me. Couple of trade-offs. I do a double leg on him. And we were off to the races. When you look at the whole storyline, how we got Kurt Angle involved, and, Rock would almost hit me with his finish certain times, and I'd always get out of it and end up hitting him with mine. It was such a back and forth, and then that celebration where I had about 3 or 4 beer cans in my hand, and it was a blind feed to him. Once I guzzled all that beer, boom, he hits me, I think with the stunner, hits me with my own finish. I sprayed the beer all over the place. Anytime me and The Rock stepped in the ring together, it was lights out from the word go. And I think it was the biggest part of that was the chemistry between myself and The Rock. Just the fact that lyrically that was a great song, and it was either going to be Rock's Way or My Way. And when I said in that promo, the sit-down promo with Jim Ross, which they took excerpts from, Rock was really coming on. Man, he was white hot. I was white hot. I thought I was cooling down a little bit. That promo, that feud, that angle leading into 17 really reinvigorated me and just got me even hotter than I was. And of course, we were basically in hostile territory for The Rock because we were in Houston, Texas, basically my backyard. Had we been in Florida, I would have been in his backyard. So I think that crowd was a little bit biased for Stone Cold because I was a Texas native, but they loved The Rock as well. But they would boo when he would start doing offense on me and cheer when I would start doing offense on him. So it was all in all electricity that went into that. What is my favorite build-up promo that you've been involved in looking back? That's my favorite build-up promo. That and a lot of the stuff with Vince because, well, shoot, man, that stuff going into 13 with Bret Hart, you know, that was a great promo and a great build-up. And I just love that one promo when I think it was Todd Pettingill when he says, you know, you've been there for so long, and then here comes this other guy, which is me, and I'm spewing my bullshit Austin 316 stuff. I think that was a great build-up package as well. And I also think the one time when I was feuding with Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler said, Vince McMahon hates Stone Cold Steve Austin so much. For every grain of sand in the desert, that's how much Vince McMahon hates Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but I always thought that was a premier build-up as well. And, you know, I always give a shout-out to those guys in production, Adam and all those guys that were putting those videos together. But the My Way one, to me, I still hear people talk about it to this day. And it was a very special build-up package, and it encompassed everything that was going on in that feud and then some. Hey, Steve, one of my fondest memories was the night you won King of the Ring in Milwaukee. I remember the shock in the crowd when you beat Jake Roberts in the finals. The sympathetic figure Roberts gets beat by the badass Steve Austin. I also remember hearing about the trip to the emergency room you took during that pay-per-view. Can you recall the events of that evening, and did you ever think your promo would lead to such an iconic Austin 316 status? Thanks, Ryan. No, man, you know, I remember working with Mark Merrow there in that first round match or second round match, whatever it was, and we had a pretty decent match. And Mark Merrow was doing one of his moves, kicked me in the mouth, and busted me open real good. Finally, you know, hit him with a stunner. This is before I had to set up with a kick to the gut. Hit him with a stunner, 1, 2, 3. I get on that turnbuckle, and I said, "You fucking right." And I meant it. I know they had to fix that F word there, but, you know, I knew that my time had come. I had one more match to go, and I was going to be with Jake the Snake Roberts. But I was going to have to go to the hospital first, get my mouth stitched up. Went to the hospital, came back, and as soon as I stepped out, Michael Hayes told me that Jake had cut a religious-based interview, and the match with Jake was really short because they didn't want all the 14 stitches in my mouth to get jacked up or infected or anything like that, torn out. So, yeah, pretty much just kind of started working Jake's ribs, you know, unwrapped them. He had suffered a rib injury from working with Vader and softened him up for me. And question is, did you ever think your promo would lead to such an iconic Austin 316 status? Hell no. I didn't think, you know, beyond that night that it would ever resonate or would ever be brought up again because I didn't know if there was ever going to be a reason for that. But sure enough, when Jimmy Miranda, the old WWE merchandise guy, came up to me and said, "Steven, the office finally wants to do a T-shirt for you. Do you have any ideas?" And I said, "You goddamn right I do." I said, I want Austin 316 on the front and a skull with Stone Cold carved in the back. So I got a T-shirt out of that. Austin 316 is here forevermore. It's been here ever since 96. Hell, every March 16th, people start sending tweets about Austin 316 days, so it's still going strong. And as far as, I guess what I remember or recollect is the number one selling T-shirt in the history of the wrestling business. So we sold a shitload of them. I had fun cutting that promo, and I had no idea that it would be so big. On another note, the what chant. I never knew the what chant would stick around as long as it's stuck around. And it's quite interesting, actually. But there is a way to avoid it when you're out there. But, yeah, sometimes it kind of gets on my nerves, too. But not really. I'm kind of laughing inside because I find it very entertaining that people still do that when people give them the pause on a promo. And people cuss me on Twitter because they're trying to listen to a promo or one of the guys or girls is trying to cut a promo and be serious about the angle they're in, and they keep getting wadded out the building. So, yeah, it has its ups and it has its downs, or its pros and cons. I never thought that would take off or last as long as it has. All right, here we go. Hey, Steve, what was your favorite part about doing the WrestleCon you did at WrestleMania this year, and would you do another? Aiden. Man, my favorite part was just meeting the people that came to my lines and have been supporting me all my career. And I had so many good interactions with everybody, and everybody was so complimentary, and I wanted to make sure that if they traveled halfway across the world, that I shook their hand and made eye contact with them and created a moment that they will remember and give them an autograph. And so meeting people was truly what I enjoyed the most. I actually didn't get a chance to visit with too many of the wrestling people there because WWE was so busy, as that's the biggest show of the year. And I was basically staying at the WrestleCon hotel, hanging out and getting a chance to shoot the breeze with Kenny Omega for about 30 minutes, just casual talk and a little bit about wrestling. Getting to know him a little bit was really cool. Getting a chance to meet Pentagon Jr. in Phoenix was really cool because I'm huge Lucha Underground fan and big Lucha Libre fan. So to talk to those guys, and they actually speak pretty good English. So to have a conversation with them and to learn more about them was fun. And being in the great state of Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana is one of my favorite towns, and Louisiana is one of my favorite states. I've wrestled in almost every middle-size, medium-size, or big-size town in Louisiana, and I played most of their football teams when I was playing at Wharton County Junior College and then North Texas State University. So I've been all up and down that state, and I love the food, and I love the people. And, of course, Louisiana's a big wrestling country anyway. Bill Watts running Mid-South down there for a long time. So they're used to good wrestling action, and they love it. So that was my favorite part about being down in there, being part of a city that I really love. I got a chance to eat at my Fisherman's Cove seafood restaurant that I eat at. Been eating at for 20 years, I guess. But that's what I enjoyed the most. Dear Steve, how do you feel when so many superstars today try to cut a serious promo, but the audience takes the wind out of themselves with the what chants? Well, I wanted to get your take on it since you're the originator. I love the work you did in the ring, and I'm a huge fan of your podcast. Thanks. That's from Raj Thomas. Hey, man, I just got finished talking about the what thing. I didn't remember this question was going to come up. It can really mess with a guy or girl's rhythm, what they're trying to say. They can get flustered. That sometimes that what chant can really be overwhelming, and you think people aren't paying attention to what you're saying. And sometimes when a really strong, heartfelt promo is happening, they'll start with that what chant, and the audience is missing out on what the wrestler is saying. And so sometimes, man, you got to time that what chant when there's some bullshit going on, and you got to be able to listen to a real deal promo so you know what's going on in the story. So yeah, I feel for you, and I feel for them when they're trying to cut a good promo, and it interrupts your rhythm. Plain and simple. Steve, when you inadvertently throw a potato, whose receipt did you dread the most getting back? Thanks and love the show. There wasn't a name with that. Man, when you inadvertently throw a potato, when you hit a receipt, man, I never got too many receipts because a lot of the times, when the guys from DX, Road Dogg, Billy Gunn, Triple H, X-Pac, man, all those guys, when they're feeding my comeback, man, I was just throwing. And a lot of them were connecting. And those guys, especially Billy Gunn and Road Dogg, they'll say, God dang, Steve was the stiffest guy in the business. But they were so busy feeding the comeback, they didn't really get a chance to throw a potato. So I can only imagine that any one of those guys would have loved to have knocked my block off because of all the potatoes I was throwing during the comeback. But like I said, that one time when Booker T snugged me, now he got the receipt, but if I'd have tagged him and he'd hit me with that receipt, that'd have been a pretty stiff receipt to get back. So Booker T throws a pretty good right hand. Other than that, God dang, I got to throw Bob Holly in there. I did a slap spot with Bob Holly. We were doing a double shot. First shot was in Pittsburgh, and the next shot was, I think it was in Cincinnati. It might have been it was 100 miles away, wherever it was. And I did the slap spot. Bob's the babyface. I'm the heel. And I slap him first. And then, about a minute or two later, Bob's going to slap me back. And holy shit. Bob got those damn brick hands. He's tougher than nails anyway, but he ain't got them brick hands like Billy Gunn. Goddamn Billy Gunn, big brick-handed bastard. But Bob lit me up. I mean, boy, he slapped the piss out of me. And I just started laughing. Not laughing at the moment or right there in the ring, but when we locked back up with him, I said, God dang, I said, I ain't going to call that spot this evening because we were going to work again that evening. This was the early show. But Bob had a hell of a damn receipt, and yeah, I'll go with Bob Holly. Boy, he could blast you. But he never complained when he hit you. But he never complained when you hit him. But he was going to get his shit in. But he never complained about nothing. Hey, man, my question is, how did you maintain great abs in late 98, 99? I know you said you drink a lot of beer and whiskey. I'm currently doing about 5 hours of cardio a week on the bike and running and struggle to get results. I drink most nights 3 to 4, sometimes 5 beers. I gave up carbs in January, but still not satisfied. Any tips or any chance you can go through your diet on the road? A question you've probably been asked 100 times. Vincent, he's coming from the UK asking this question. Dude, you got to get out of them beers. Unless if you're not getting any results and you're still drinking 3 or 4, 5 beers a night, let's just say a beer in England is probably going to have 150 calories. 5 times 15, that's 750 calories, is that? Because 4 times 15 be 60. So yeah, 750 calories a night. So then you go 750 times 7. Man, that's a lot of damn calories. And all that, man, beer bloats you, dude. Anything will bloat you if you drink enough of it. My advice to you, you can't out-train a shitty diet. And when I try to get serious about weight loss, like when I did that keto diet, I eliminated all alcohol from my diet, and that was the difference. If you're going to drink 1 day a week or 1 night a week, at the most 2. And I would do them back to back and get them out of the way, but don't let me give you any excuses. If you have to have a couple of beers during the week, drink 1 day or 1 night a week. And don't get shit-faced. Drink you 4, 5, or 6 beers, and then you're done. You're going to play your catch-up work during the week. But drinking that much beer every single night of the week, I can tell you first-hand experience, you probably ain't going to burn much fat, and that's the end of that story. Hey, Steve, I just wondered what Kristen thinks of how the wrestling world still reacts to you. She came along afterwards, and it must be sort of weird for her to occasionally see you being stone cold again, like Raw 25. Great show. Love the podcast. Chris from Charleston, South Carolina. You know what? I met my wife when I'd already retired from the business of pro wrestling. And a lot of times people will send me matches that I've been involved in through my questions at steveaustonshow.com website, where I check my emails. I'll be watching a clip and she'll go, oh my God, you were crazy back then. So she thinks the Stone Cold character was obviously, pretty over the top and a lot different than the guy she's been living with for 14 years. So I guess it's kind of, it's weird for her. I mean, like I said, it's been a long time, but like when I showed up on Raw 25, I mean, she was cool. I mean, she really appreciated the pop that I got. Probably didn't appreciate it as much as I did, but she handles it, but we don't talk about it too much really. Hey, Steve, your famous match with Chris Benoit from SmackDown on May 31st, 2001 has recently been made available to watch on the network. I had not watched it since it originally aired and remembered it being badass. Well, I watched it, and it's every bit as awesome as I remember it. My question is about the 10 German suplexes. I know you've talked about them before in your podcast, but I was wondering, was this an in-the-moment decision, or did you plan on taking them before the match? Were you in pain going into the match? It is a fast-paced brawl with lots of little bits of details you don't often see today. Also, your beer is delicious. Thank you, Paul. Paul Maloon. Yep, I do have a delicious beer, Broken Skull IPA. Let's talk about that match. That was a match I was talking about earlier. I said, hey, man, we're going to go as long as we need to go. And it was Chris's hometown, I believe. I think it was Edmonton. We had worked the night before. Didn't have the match I wanted to have because that's how much I knew Chris could go, how much I respected him. And so I just said, hey, man, I don't see you making a traditional comeback on me. I see this being something where you just grab, me from behind and let's do 10 German suplexes, 10 in a row, because I just don't see a regular comeback. I see 10 German suplexes, and then here comes Vince coming down, and I barely escape with the belt. And Chris thought about that for a minute. He goes, I like that. And so that's what we went out and did. So it wasn't in the moment. It was something that I called, I planned, I ran across Chris, he dug it, and we did it. And I'll never forget after that match, I've said it on the podcast before, is one of the highest compliments I'd ever been paid by an opponent. We always shake hands after the matches. And, man, that was Chris's hometown, man, and we got off. The headbutt off the top turnbuckle, me throwing the belt up. He gets a little bit of color from that accidentally. It was a real solid match. And he goes, man, he goes, thanks. He goes, you really got me over. And he got it. He knew what I was trying to do, and that was my job to do, was to get him over. He was already over to a degree, but I got him more over than he was after the match than he was before the match. And he recognized that, and he told me that, and I'll never forget that compliment. And I wish things hadn't gone the way they did with Chris as far as down the road. But, man, the Chris Benoit that I knew, badass worker, great dude, cool as hell. And so I remember that match vividly. Out of all the things I've forgotten, I remember that match. And I remember my first trip to Japan. Hell, I guess it was with WCW. It's when I tore my tricep off my arm. But, Chris was there. Eddie Guerrero was there. Dean Malenko was there. Myself, Arn, Ron Simmons. And watching Benoit and Malenko and Guerrero go out there every night and rip the damn roof off the building, to have to follow them, that was damn near impossible. Those guys, as great as they were in America, or Dean was awesome everywhere, man, but, Chris and Eddie, man, they thrived over in Japan, and they could work their asses off, and they were like buzzsaws over there, so they were hard to follow. Yeah, that's what I remember about that match. I called the suplexes, and I wasn't in any pain. And the pain you're speaking of is because I just come back from a neck fusion, and I figured at all the bumps that I'd taken leading up to that match that I would be fine taking those bumps. And it would be a great ploy and a great strategy for Chris to use to take me out and to focus on my weakness or perceived weakness, which could have been construed as being my neck because of the fusion, because of the surgery. And I was working heel at the time, so, he's giving it back to me and then some. And so it made sense for that in his comeback. From Mike O'Brien in Cincinnati, Ohio. Steve, not only am I a lifelong wrestling fan, but I've been a fan of yours in particular for many years and continue to listen to your podcast every week. My question is, for a brief period during your WCW run in the early 90s, did you stop wearing knee pads? I've always been curious as to why some guys chose not to wear them, and in some cases, both yourself and Cody Rhodes come to mind. Guys who previously wore them will suddenly stop. You eventually went back to wearing them, so I didn't know if this was a reason other than just trying to change up your look. Thanks. Okay, Mike from Cincinnati. You know what? I've been wearing them damn knee braces, and I just figured, you know what? I'm going to go back to being old school. And, if the old-timers did it, hell, I can too. And I'm just going to take those knee pads off for a while and change things up. And so there for a while, I can't remember how long it was, Kevin Nash always talks about this. He goes, man, I remember traveling down the road with you when you weren't wearing knee pads, and every night your ass was up there on the top turnbuckle fixing to splash somebody in front of 75 people. He was talking about how we paid our dues and going down the road and learning all the tricks of the trade. But, yeah, man, I don't think it was the smartest decision in the world. And then after a while, I ended up obviously going back to the knee pads. I don't recommend anybody wrestle without knee pads. You just spend too much time on your knees, taking bumps, getting in positions with rear chin locks and stuff like that. It's not just the bumps; it's landing on the mats, it's stuff like that. It's just a constant grind. It's strawberries and all kinds of things happen, and that mat is the dirtiest piece of fabric in history. So staph infection, all that stuff, very easy to get. So I just did it for a while and smartened back up, put the knee pads back on, and shortly after that, there came the knee braces. But, dude, I was just changing up my looks, and that was all there ever was. Here comes one from Richard McMickens. Steve, my question is, have you ever thought about selling any of your rides, not including your Ford Escort? No, it's a Ford Focus. I know you have the Ram Charger, which is badass, and the Bronco, and your pickup. If so, I would love to take one of those off your hands. Man, I tell you what, Richard, I just bought a brand new 2018 3/4 ton Duramax Z71. That's my new ride, but I still use my 2003 Z71 with that 5.3 liter to haul my four-wheeler around and my motorcycle when I go out to ride it on the BLM. I love that pickup truck. It's got 80,000 miles on it, and my new one's got 1,400 miles on it. I'll probably never sell that Chevy. As far as that Bronco goes, I thought about selling it. I entertained the thoughts of buying a new Jeep Wrangler or a Toyota TRD Tacoma, but I just love that Bronco too much. It has 41,000 original miles, and it's a 1995, and it's 100% stock. So there's a slim chance that I would sell the Bronco. That Ram Charger's a 1988. It's got a 3.5-inch lift kit on it for Broken Skull Challenge. I'm the second original owner. I'm fixing to delift it and go down to 33s, and I'm thinking about a 2-inch lift so I can make it a little bit more user-friendly. It's got the 318 cubic inch motor. It's 99% original. I installed a tachometer to see the RPMs. Other than that, well, I had the exhaust done from the muffler back, but that thing is completely stock. It has a Z-Bart rust protection package, 27,000 original miles, and I will own that thing when I am dead, and that's the bottom line. Here's a question. Hey, Steve, I was at a bar or a pub today hitting the breeze with some friends when a man tapped my shoulder and told me to stop using strong language, quoting it as idiotic and shamefully on myself and others in presence before attempting to get me thrown out for such vulgar vocabulary with the F word. I told him to F off, but it still pissed me off. I wonder if you've ever had strangers have a problem with your use of curses. Do you respect them or tell them to shove it? Love the show, especially you and Kristen together. Hey, this is from Sean Alsop in London. Hey, Sean, sometimes when you're in a public place, when I'm in a public place, I cuss a lot. But when I'm in a public place, I'm actually pretty damn quiet. I'm probably one of the quietest people in a restaurant. And if I'm cussing, the only other person that can hear me cuss is my wife. But when I'm around people like that are being real loud or dropping the F word, I don't really take up issue with them. I just kind of let them do their thing. Hopefully maybe someone will quiet them down, or maybe they'll put two and two together. Some people are just loud drunks or sloppy drunks. So I can see where the dude was coming from, when maybe you were offending him or his family, or especially if there's some kids around. Hey, it is what it is, dude. Most of the time in my personal life, everything comes out of my damn mouth as a 4-letter word, but sometimes you got to pick your spots. And I guess the guy kind of took offense to it, but I can see where he come from, and you probably could too if you had your girl there, maybe your parents or something like that, and someone was being real loud. So it is what it is. But I've heard many people do that, but I'm not the guy that people will say, hey, I heard Stone Cold drop an F-bomb over and over in the bar. That ain't gonna happen because that ain't how I roll. Here's a question. Hey, Steve, glad you're doing well. Always been a huge fan back to your Stunning Steve days in WCW. I was wondering, since you sold the BSR, what did you do with the vehicles like your Ford Broncos? Thanks, your show rocks. Robert, that's my green and silver 1996 Ford Bronco and my green 1995 Bronco, which is out of Arizona. I bought those off of eBay. I conveyed those with the sale. I kept my 95 Bronco that I just got finished speaking of. I let those convey with the sale because I didn't have anywhere to take them, anything to do with them, and they were geared up for the ranch. And the value on those things, well, those are badass four-wheel drive vehicles, and they're highly dependable. So I just didn't have any more use for them, so I conveyed those two Broncos with the ranch, and I kept my white and silver one. Steve, I love the show. I've been listening since day one. You, Rock, and Triple H were the big three in WWE/F in the Attitude Era and had a lot of chemistry. What was your relationship with these guys outside of the ring, and do you remember your first time meeting them and your first impression of them? Thanks, Marvin D. from Philly. Man, Marvin, I met Triple H when he first came into WCW, and here he came in, good-looking dude, good worker. Even back then, he wasn't too long out of Killer Kowalski's school. I think he'd probably been working, he'd worked several matches because he was pretty polished, even when he came into WCW. We hit it off right off the bat. Same sense of humor. I was a little bit older than him, but I hadn't been in business too much longer, if any. So, man, we just introduced ourselves to each other, and I knew he had a bright future in the business, and I don't know what he thought about me, but we always hit it off. Same sense of humor, same taste in music. He was a huge bodybuilding, powerlifting fan, always hit the gym, wasn't a drinker, respected that. Good dude, great sense of humor, low key, one of the boys. So that's how I met Triple H. And we hit it off from day one. And to this day, whenever we see each other, it's like old times. We didn't run in the same crowds. We didn't travel together. He had his crew and I had mine, or I was solo at the time. But nothing but good things. I remember when Rock came in, man, you knew this guy had potential when you saw him. He is a good-looking guy. You just knew the gimmick wasn't right at first. And then, he changed his gimmick around. He ended up joining Nation and then turned into The Rock. And then me and Rock started working together. But I was always cool with The Rock. I knew he had potential. I think everybody did. He had the right frame, the right look, really smart, charismatic. So you saw a lot of potential in him as soon as he came in, but the gimmick wasn't right. But boy, when he turned into The Rock, or when he was with Nation and he started turning heel, I mean, the people rejected him at first as a baby, but they took to him as a heel, and he had some serious heat. And then, of course, when he turned baby, he was mega over. Myself and The Rock, I probably worked with Triple H many, many times, but I probably worked with The Rock more times. And the chemistry with both guys in the ring, I go back to the 3 stages of hell match that I had with Triple H in Las Vegas. It was a hell of a match, but I've worked so many matches, and I was really getting hot when I was working with Triple H. Rock was really getting hot when he was working with me, so we kind of... and of course, when I was gone, the feud those two guys had while I was getting my neck surgery was awesome. But hit it off with both guys instantly. Remain great friends with each of them. We don't call or text each other, but whenever we're in the same room, it's like nothing ever changed. No time has ever passed. We just start shooting the breeze and start picking it up from right where we're left off, and nothing but respect. Hey, on last 2 questions, Steve, just wondering if you have anything to say about Hawk, Davey, or Pillman. They were all in the main event, and now they're gone. Kind of sad to think about. Thank you, Tim. Man, as far as Hawk goes, one of the Road Warriors, one of the greatest tag teams, the biggest draws in the history of the business. What a character. What a cool guy. He was out there. And everybody liked him. He had some issues, but, Hawk and Animal were the 2 guys that came up with the idea for the Stone Cold Championship belt. And I remember when I first saw the Road Warriors, I saw their debut in NWA. I hadn't seen them before that. But, man, when I saw those guys, I said to myself, holy shit, what is this? These guys are insanity. I mean, Hawk, those gigantic traps, Animal, both guys just jacked up makeup, mohawk, reverse mohawk, the spikes. Tell him, Hawk. Wilt. The promos, Precious Paul Ellering, gym fanatic, workout freak, smart guy. Those guys were awesome. But Hawk, just a good dude, man. It's too bad he's not here with us anymore. Davey, man, what a run he had. I'll never forget that one match. I guess it was when they wrestled in Wimbledon when he had those the cornrows in, and he was jacked up. He looked like $1 million. Had a classic match with Bret the Hitman Hart. And a couple times, I traveled a little bit with Davey Boy, and just the consummate ribber. Always, like in a good mood, or if he was in a bad mood, he was so sarcastic and dry. He was absolutely hilarious with that Manchester, I guess, accent, whatever it was. Super dude, hell of a worker, great gimmick. Him and Dynamite, one of the greatest tag teams of all time as well. Just phenomenal. I wish he was still here. Davey was cool as shit. He really was. And the late, great Flying Brian Pillman, man, one of my best friends in the history of the business. One of my tag team partners is the Hollywood Blondes. And then the cutting edge character that was the loose cannon Brian Pillman that he created and, just really launched and did that and kayfabed everybody and worked everybody. What a phenomenal mind and a guy who what a phenomenal mind and a guy who overcame every obstacle that life threw at him. And just sad, I'll never forget that night in Minnesota, we got finished working that house show. We had that pay-per-view the next day, and Brian was kind of wobbling through the dressing room, and I didn't think anything of it. Just figured, that's Brian. He'll be fine. And he wasn't fine. That's when he ended up dying that night, and we found out the next day at that pay-per-view. But, man, nothing but respect for all those guys. And, I was closest with Brian Pillman, obviously. And I'll never forget riding that Porsche he had, man, when we was in Cincinnati. And he scared the living shit out of me. I thought the guy, one of the smartest guys I've ever known, one of the craziest guys I've ever known, but all good dudes. But anyway, I'm going to wrap up this podcast. I'm going to come back and I'm going to close the show.
If you like sports podcasts, check out Podcast One Sports Now every Tuesday on Podcast One Sportsnet.
The Yankees and Red Sox are already fighting it out for first in the East, and it looks like they'll be the two teams going down the stretch.
Backed by AP's sports department, Jim Litke and Tim Dahlberg break down the latest news and events throughout the week, and podcasting from all major sporting events on site throughout the year.
Keep a close eye on LeBron because we're pretty sure there's some heroics left in this guy.
Check out Podcast One Sports Now at Podcast One Sportsnet and Apple Podcasts. Also, remember to rate and review.
All right, everybody, give me the go-home cue. So I'm going to wrap up this podcast and ride off in the sunset. Before I do that, I want to thank you for sending me your questions to questions@steveaustonshow.com. Anytime you have a question or a comment, send it to me to that address. I'll either write you a response myself or answer it on the show. I always keep these questions. I try to comprise a list of them so that I can get a show out of them because, quite frankly, I like answering the questions that you guys sent in. So thank you very much. And if you have a question, please send it in. As random as they are, I dig answering them. Hey, folks, I want to say thank you to all the fine sponsors of the Steve Austin Show, especially Diamond Dallas Page, my buddy from DDP Yoga, Geico, Hims, and the WWE Network. That's how I'm able to do the podcast for you twice a week for free. And you can find all my sponsors at PodcastOne.com. Just click on the Killer Deals button at the top of the page and then click on the Steve Austin Show banner. Folks, I am on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Steve Austin BSR. Folks, until next time, my name is Steve Austin, and I'll catch your ass down the road.
This has been a Podcast One production. Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.